Now it's chapter 53, Dark Fiend. The first one to attack was Blaze. Bree stood motionless, frightened by the sheer size of Zirum's true form. All she could do was watch as her wolf launched at the moth monster's legs, snarling and biting. The creature hissed at Blaze and then swiped at him with its clawed arms. He dodged the attack and turned to face its underbelly. A stream of fire came from Blaze and seared the underside of Zirum's body. The creature screeched and flew into the air, the fluttering from its hairy wings sending shivers through Bree's body. Blaze ran in circles underneath Zirum, firing upward as the creature flew around the room, making sure he was out of reach. Blaze varied his attack from fire to ice and then lightning, trying to keep Zirum confused and unable to defend itself. Odiana flew overhead and released concentrated balls of fairy fire at the wings, hoping to burn them and keep the creature on the ground. Her attacks were random, as she spent most of her time avoiding the scorpion tail, flailing this way and that. For a while, the two of them were doing very well to battle Zirum. Suddenly, Odiana moved the wrong way and was hit on the side by the scorpion tail, throwing her against the wall behind Bree. This jostled Bree back into the present. She quickly glanced back to see Odiana shaking her head, clearly not injured too much from the hit. Turning back, she joined the fight. The first thing Bree decided to deal with was to get rid of the scorpion tail. She activated the flames on the blade of the mystic sword and tried swiping at the base of the tail. Zirum noticed this and began thrusting the stinger at Bree. After a few misses, Bree timed her movement and slashed when the tail came beside her, cutting off part of the end. Zirum screeched and flailed around in a circle. Bree avoided being hit by the lower wings, but couldn't avoid the clawed arms. One hit her square in the chest, throwing her back a few feet. The mystic sword dropped from her hand as she flew back. She tried to regain her footing and grab the sword, but Zirum reached out and lifted her high into the air. The creature roared and brought her closer to its mouth. She tried to summon all her strength from the porphyrium bracelet to get out of its grip, but it was no use. She could move her hand a little, but all she could feel was her hip pack. There was a sudden jerking motion as Blaze leapt onto the arm and held Bree and sunk his teeth into it. Zirum growled and grabbed Blaze with his other clawed arm. The wolf yelped in pain and then closed his eyes to concentrate. All 3 feathers on his collar began to glow. There was a sudden explosion of magical energy from Blaze as lightning surged through Zirum, flames crawled down the hairy arms, and ice shards flew out from between its claws and into its chest. As it screamed in pain, it dropped Bree to the ground. As it flailed, it swung its arm holding Blaze and flung the wolf across the antechamber. He crashed into the far wall, crumbling the stone decor, and then collapsed into a heap on the floor. Zirum twisted its body around to hit Bree with what remained of its tail. She managed to take out her grip hook and fired it into the far wall. She soared across the room, narrowly avoiding the hit. Turning back to the fight, she saw Odiana attempting to fire more of her magic at Zirum's wings, hoping to burn them. The fairy still looked shaken from her earlier hit, so her attack was less effective. On the other side of the fight, Blaze lay on the ground, motionless. A terrible feeling crossed over Bree, and then anger began to rise within her. She looked up at Zirum and studied the monster's movements. Once she saw a pattern, she ran straight at it. Using the grip hook, she fired at the mystic sword, which was lying near Blaze's body. It grasped the weapon and quickly drew it toward her. Zirum's eyes caught her advance, so it turned to battle her. Snapping her wrist, Bree released her hold on the grip hook by throwing it to her left. The mystic sword still flew in her direction, even if the chain was now retracted into a different direction. She lunged forward into a dive and grasped the handle of the sword as the barbed end of the grip hook released from the hilt. Her body spun in place until she could sink the sword deep into Zirum's chest. The monster roared in pain and then screamed as Bree twisted the hilt and activated the lightning power on her sword. In her mind, she could hear the elements talking to her through the pendant. She asked them for help. A bright glow exploded from her chest where the pendant rose, followed by a similar glow erupting from the wound where the mystic sword was embedded. Zirum shook violently, fluttered its wings, tried to grab Bree, who now stood below it, and then released an unnatural noise from its mouth. The glow from the sword wound got brighter until it surrounded Zirum's body, and then it exploded into a shower of multicolored dust. Bree collapsed to the floor, exhausted. Odiana crashed down beside her, breathing fast. They sat that way for a while, and then they both turned to look at Blaze. He still hadn't moved. They crawled over to his body and shook it. Odiana sprinkled some fairy dust over him, but there was no response. Blaze was dead.